This Sunday, I want to start you with a quote, because one of these days my son's going to bring home a girl, and we're going to grill her and ask her a bunch of questions. Same way it goes both ways. But the most important thing is not how much money her daddy makes. The most important thing is obviously how much she makes. No, the most important thing actually is what comes into her mind when she thinks about God. And I would put before you a quote by E.W. Tozer. And he's smart because he uses initials. That's how you can tell if people are smart. They use initials. But he said this: what comes into our minds when we think about God is the most important thing about us. Dwell on that for a moment, would you? We exist to build vertical and horizontal relationships, but when God made us in his image, he gave us intellect, emotion, and will. Not just emotion, not just will, but intellect as well. We're going to push that a little bit today. What comes into your mind when you think about God? What kind of God do you believe in? What kind of God do you not believe in? It's going to determine a lot. Whether you believe in an angry God, a wrathful God, a God who is filled with love for everyone but has no sense of justice, a God that only gives mercy but never gives out any punishment, or maybe an amoral God, or a God who's distant, or maybe no God at all. But whatever comes into your mind when you think about God will dictate and determine a ton of things. It'll determine how you treat other people, how you treat their property, how you treat and talk to yourself will determine greatly about your view of what comes into your mind when you think about God. It'll determine how you treat those who are poor and those who are uber wealthy. For those who are very capable, they're glorious athletes, and others who are literally incapable of working because of intelligence or physical limitations. It will determine greatly how you treat the environment, how you treat animals, work, property, money. So as you look at everything, my question to you for this entire series is, what makes sense of what you see and know? When you take a look at everything you've experienced, when you take a look at everything you've seen and you know, what makes sense of that? A universe with God or a universe without a God? I see ushers on the ready. If you didn't get a bulletin when you came in, lift your hand. These ushers are going on strike soon, so please start getting your bulletins as you walk in the door. That will be good. They're asking for more pay and health insurance. Can you believe it? Seriously, man. Drives me nuts, man. I'm going to go broke giving everybody health insurance. What makes sense of what you see and know? Based on the experiences that you've had, the evidence you've seen, what makes sense of nature? The fact that there is a God or that there isn't? What makes sense of disaster, of suffering, of evil, of meaning, of purpose, of consciousness, of beauty? When you encounter beauty, how do you define it? What's the purpose of it? When you encounter beauty, does that mean that, hey, that's evidence, that's a clue, that's a breadcrumb that there is a God? Or is that a clue that, hey, we're just a random collection of atoms and we just happen to think that that is marvelous? Matter of fact, we'll be ending each service in this series, instead of playing the basic K-Love kind of music as you're exiting, with some of the most beautiful music humankind has ever written. So as you exit, we're not starting a wedding. But you will hear something. You might hear at a wedding. Why? Because it's majestic. It's beautiful. And as you hear it, I hope you start thinking through, does that help me, give me some evidence that there is a God? Or is that just another reminder that we're an accidental collection of physics and biology? So this series is definitely for those who believe but still have wonder and still have some doubts. It's definitely for those who wonder how anyone could believe. And if you're here and you're going, this room is filled with a bunch of morons that actually believe in some of this stuff, you're our favorite person here, and we're so glad that you're here. Or if you're someone who'd like to believe again, but you wonder if it's possible. Because our world is totally polarized over religion, and actually it's getting more and more polarized. The number of people that are claiming to be religious is increasing on our planet. Maybe not so much in certain cultures in America, but you go global, the number of people that are getting more and more religious is growing. Secular Europe, which is supposed to be the death of religion, is supposed to be becoming more and more secular, yet Christianity is growing there and Islam is growing rapidly in secular Europe. But on the same side, people that are skeptics, their numbers are growing. And they're getting bolder with their skepticism and their atheism. Now, I am not a math major, but I do understand that if religious people are growing in number and skeptics are growing in number, what's decreasing? That one's an easy one. What's decreasing are people that used to say, oh, I believe, but they really didn't. They believed, but they didn't live like it, and they didn't believe it in their heart. They're practically an atheist. But now they have the confidence in the culture to say, I don't believe, Yes, Mom and Dad, I know you took me there. I know you wanted me to. I know you want us to get married there, but I don't believe there's a God. And can I tell you, I think that's a good thing that they're finally having the courage to say that. Because I think there's way more hope for the skeptic who is honest and authentic with their beliefs than for the person who says they believe but is really a total hypocrite and a practical atheist. Basically, they're lukewarm here. They're barely lukewarm. And they're lying. Oh, yeah, I believe that. And inside they're going, there's no way I believe that. Way more better to be honest with your non-belief than it is to be false with what you say you believe. So let's take a close look at that today. Our world keeps getting more and more polarized, but if we don't go ahead and start understanding the other side, whether you are on this side and you are someone who does believe, but you still have some wonder and some doubt, and everybody does if they believe. Everybody does. If you think you have absolutely no doubts whatsoever about everything that has to do with Scripture, everything that has to do about how God behaves, then congratulations. You can answer all the questions just immediately about why there's a loving God and there's still suffering and evil and why hell exists and what happened to why the torture, why disasters, why hurricanes. Because that basically means that every time you and God talk, he always agrees with you. That's a difficult spot to get to. But on the flip side, you've got some over here. And the people that are skeptics think those are out to get them. And they're tired of religion being forced down their throat. And the people over here that are believers are scared of the skeptics. They're going to take away their rights. What a dangerous spot to be. But Jesus was comfortable around skeptics. And people that were nothing like Jesus really liked being around Jesus. Shouldn't people that don't believe in Jesus like being around people that do believe in Jesus? They should. They don't. Maybe we should understand each other a little bit better so we can get past the idea of denouncing each other and maybe just having a straight disagreement at times. And yeah, we should have people that are our friends that don't believe, because it's really hard to win people to Christ that are your enemies. But we can win those who are our friends. So if you're following along in your notes, I'd like to start by proposing this. The best way we can move forward is to start to understand our doubts and understand that doubts are beliefs. Doubts are beliefs. You can't hold a non-belief about something. It's actually a philosophical, you can't go there. A non-belief. So let me use a physical example here. This is belief A over here. And let's say that the belief A is the Chiefs will win the Super Bowl this year. Is there anyone that believes belief A this year? Let me see your hand. Okay. So there are a few people in this room that believe belief A. Now, underneath belief A is a foundation of assertions, assumptions, arguments, past experience, and future hope. Underneath belief A is not just faith. There's also reason under there. You might disagree with that reason, that's okay. But there is reason under belief A. What you cannot do in this room or on the planet, unless you want to be intellectually dishonest and a total hypocrite, is to say, I don't believe in belief A. Because then you're standing out here on thin air, under no foundation, as if you are God and you have all knowledge. What you can do, though, is stand over here and believe B. And instead of doubting belief A, you realize, I don't believe the Chiefs will win the Super Bowl this year. Who believes that? Okay. And why do you believe that? Because of assertions, assumptions, arguments, evidence, past heartbreak, back to Joe Montana days? Yes, and you have reason for that. You also have faith because you believe it, because it's not a provable fact. It is not a provable fact right now whether the Chiefs will win the Super Bowl or the Chiefs will not win the Super Bowl. What I want you to understand is, just because someone believes this, you can't non-believe it. Your doubt is actually an alternate set of beliefs. So, if you used to believe there is a God, and you're standing on this, there is a God, and this is why, and this is why, and this is why, and it was all Sunday school flannel graph and mommy made you believe it answers. Maybe it's time for your God to grow up into your adulthood. And maybe some of you walked away from that belief. And you think you're out here and you doubt God. I doubt there's a God. No, you don't. And this is where I'm going to push you. You don't doubt there's a God. You just moved away from one set of beliefs to another set of beliefs. And can I tell you, if you're standing on this set of beliefs that says, I don't think there's a God, you probably know more about that foundation than this foundation. Have you really inspected this foundation? My challenge to you is if you're going to doubt Christianity, do it authentically, do it honestly, and investigate it. And you ought to investigate it anyways, because you need to know what you're standing on over here if you believe there's a God. If you believe theism is the word, so atheism would be the opposite side. If you have a theistic worldview, you're saying there is a God. Therefore, I can make sense of suffering even if I don't agree with it. What do you do with suffering if you're over here? Sorry, I just got to week 3 in the message series. We'll get back to this right away. Doubts are beliefs, and that's what I want to get to. So, what is your faith in Christianity based on? If you believe in God, what is it based on? And if you don't believe, what is it based on? What makes sense of what you see and know? What makes sense of it? So moving forward, we need to understand that, and my challenge to you would be to doubt your doubts. To doubt your doubts. A skeptic should doubt their doubts. A believer should be willing to doubt their doubts. If you're a skeptic in the belief of God and you're standing over here, I doubt that's true. I doubt there's a God. Okay. Have you put what you're holding to the test? Have you put the screws to it? Have you doubted what you're standing on? Have you taken a hard investigative look at what you're actually standing on? If you're going to doubt Christianity, do it honestly. And what most of us run into, and we've done this, I've been this person, you may have been both people, but if we're over here and we're going, yeah, I believe in God, and we say it quietly under an umbrella, the umbrella of Sunday morning, and maybe some of us go broadcast on Facebook a little bit and say, yes, I believe in God. If you believe in God, please copy this, and if you don't copy this, it means you don't believe in God. Stop doing that. Thank you. But what happens when you come across an atheist that's actually maybe a little more aggressive? They start putting what you're standing on to the test. Well, how do you know Jesus ever existed? How do you know? I think the Gospels were all fabricated. They were all written 200 AD, How do you know? How do you know? They have the right to ask those questions. They do. And you don't have to have a philosophical, theological answer for every single one. But here's what never happens. You're allowed to ask questions about what they're standing on. And if you're an atheist or a skeptic today, my simple question to you is, the proof that you are asking Christians to show, are you willing to show proof for your foundations as well? Because I'll get to it later, but neither of these positions is irrefutable beyond any shadow of a doubt. That's why they're called beliefs and not facts. A fact is water boils at 212 degrees in average barometric pressure. That's a proven fact. The Chiefs winning the Super Bowl this year is not a proven fact. There is a God, there is not a God. It is not a proven fact beyond any doubt whatsoever. Technically, both sides are possible, and we'll get to that where it's going to take faith on either side. The question is, how big of a leap can you make? I would tell you it takes a bigger leap to go here than it does to go here. So what does it say if you're a skeptic today? What does it say if the proof you require of the theistic worldview does not equal the proof you're willing to offer? What does that say about you? And what does that say about atheism if you're not willing to offer the same proof that you're demanding? Some would say, oh, the pressure's on the Christian to prove there's a God. No. Atheists are not doubting there's a God. Atheists are standing on a separate set of beliefs that there is no God. Amazingly, I think that there does happen to be a God, and amazingly, he's willing to let atheists stand on this, and he doesn't shoot them with lightning immediately. That tells you something about him right there. The question is, what are you standing on if you're standing over here? And that's a fair question to ask anyone that's holding that view. Now, that's for the skeptic. Believer, you need to wrestle with your doubts. You need to quit hide them under a bushel. No, you need to quit hiding them. The doubts that you have, like how could God let a hurricane hit? How could God do this? How could God do that? If we'd really be honest, which this is the hardest place in the world to be honest, this and a family reunion, unless there's been too much alcohol involved, then everyone's way too honest maybe. If we're going to be honest, we've all got some doubts. And not doubts, oh, I don't really know if Jesus forgave me. No, I'm talking doubts like, why does God allow that? And what it basically means is you and God don't see eye to eye on everything. What would it tell you if you and God did see eye to eye on everything? And that you and the creator of a universe and universe says, with infinite knowledge and wisdom, says, oh, actually, I agree with you on everything. It might indicate that the God you're worshiping is actually an idealized version of yourself instead of the God who is. If there is a God, it should be expected that he's not always going to agree with you. If you're a kid and you have a parent, parents, it's expected that your kid's not always going to agree with you, even if your scope of knowledge is this and their scope of knowledge is smaller than a pea. Even still. So we struggle with some of those things. Let your faith be challenged, believer. Some of your doubts, I doubt God would do that. You might not want to put God in that small of a box. You may want to challenge some of your doubts. If your faith is not challenged, you will have a fragile faith. And when the doctor says cancer, when the financial guy says you're upside down, bankruptcy, and when the wife or someone else says I've served you papers, your faith will crumble because it is based on a flannel graph from third grade that gave you truth. But it gave you truth that a third grader can handle. You're not in third grade anymore. And you don't lie to a third grader about faith, but you can't tell them everything they need to be told at that time. Oh, Noah's Ark is so cute. Noah's Ark was judgment. But you can't tell that exactly in that direct path to a first grader. But at 35 years old or at 50 years old, you can't go, oh, isn't it nice and cute? No, it wasn't nice and cute. But I don't know if I agree with God on that. Well, good. Now you know you're actually dealing with a God that might actually exist if he doesn't always agree with you. So when it comes to your doubts, don't be afraid of them. And whether you're a skeptic and you have doubts, or whether you're a believer and you have doubts, we don't handle doubt well. But let me tell you someone who does handle doubt well. Jesus. Jesus handles doubt well. There's two main instances in Scripture where we see it, and we're going to look at one in particular. But Jesus handles doubt better than most people. There's a situation in the New Testament where Jesus has already been arrested, crucified, buried, and resurrected from the dead. And he appears to the disciples. But one of the disciples is missing. It was Saturday and he was at Chick-fil-A. And he was not able to be there when Jesus showed up. That disciple's name is Thomas. And as Americans, we generally call him, we give him a nickname before his first name, and we call him Doubting Thomas. Let me tell you who doesn't call him Doubting Thomas. People from India. Because history shows that Thomas, after his encounter with the risen Christ, went to India and planted the gospel there, started 7 churches. Mostly in southern India, which is why southern India is probably more Christian than northern India. They don't call him Doubting Thomas in India. They call him St. Thomas. But he started off by doubting. Let's take a look at the scriptures in John chapter 20, verse 24. As I said, the resurrected Christ has appeared, and Thomas was getting Chick-fil-A. Now Thomas, called Didymus, because they all had nicknames, that was the rapper name, I think, one of the 12, was not with the disciples when Jesus came. Bad time to be missing with the group. So the other disciples told him, we've seen the Lord. First-hand testimony, eyewitness testimony from people you've been with for 3 years. Unless I see the nail marks in his hands and put my finger where the nails were and put my hand into his side, I will not believe it. He hears the disciples' counts. Thomas doubts, which, by the way, is the most common response to the resurrection of Jesus Christ in the scriptures, is doubt. And then Thomas requests more evidence. And Jesus has so many cards he can play here. Jesus can do so much. Jesus can put on his God voice, Thomas. He could do that, but he doesn't. He could go ahead and send a message to someone else to creep him out. Thomas, or Peter, go tell Thomas blah, 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 and that I really am risen. And let's see if Thomas will believe Peter's word. Scripture shows sometimes that God sent messages through other people before. Jesus could have just appeared in a dream to Thomas, spiritually, in a vision, in a dream, and say, Thomas, I'm risen. Jesus did that and still does that to many Muslims in the 1040 window where latitude and longitude was pretty much all Muslim. Jesus could have said, yo, angel, strike him with blindness. I'm sick of this guy. And Jesus has struck people with blindness before to get them to come to faith. But he doesn't. Jesus doesn't do any of that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days later. A week later, his disciples were in the house again, and Thomas was with them. It was Sunday. Chick-fil-A was closed. Though the doors were locked, Jesus came in and stood among them and said, peace be with you. Awesome, yeah. Amazing? Yeah. Awkward? Especially if you're Thomas. Especially if you're Thomas. Then Jesus said to Thomas, put your finger here. What could Jesus have said to Thomas? Oh, put your finger here. See my hands. For 7 days, Jesus has known exactly what Thomas was doubting. And his first words to Thomas are peace. Second words, here's your evidence you're asking for. Now reach out your hand. Put it into my side. I doubt Thomas actually did that. Scripture doesn't tell us, but I doubt very much. He said, well, let me make sure of this right now. I doubt that very much. I doubt that based on Thomas's response. We'll see in a moment. But Jesus responded to Thomas's request with more evidence, with evidence. So when skeptics are asking you for more evidence, don't push them away. Even if you can't provide it. Or even if it makes you feel like you have bad faith and you're not a good Christian because you don't have answers for all their questions. They don't have answers for all their questions. Jesus didn't answer everybody's question. Jesus frequently answered questions with questions. So Jesus responded to his request for more evidence. Then Jesus said, stop doubting. Doubt your doubts, Thomas. Doubt your doubts. Believe. Why didn't Jesus say, stop doubting, here's all the evidence. You got any more questions? I'll give you all the evidence that you want. I'll answer every single question that you have so you have no irrefutable proof. Thomas, would you want it? No. It's still going to take some belief. So my question to you, and this, I came up with this past week as I was studying this, hopefully is the harshest thing I'll say all series, but we'll see. Oops, my Lord and my God was Thomas's response. Yeah. Thomas' response was, my Lord. How did Thomas respond to more evidence? Thomas responded with belief. Thomas responded with belief. How would you respond if Jesus gave you more evidence? How would you respond? So here's my statement. If you honestly asked for more evidence, what would you honestly do with it? Well, I just can't believe because I don't understand how there can be evil in a loving, powerful God. Okay. If you got an answer that as best as human wisdom could give you, could satisfy how, what would you do with that evidence? Would you go, my Lord and my God? Or would you simply come up with another question to keep Jesus at arm's length? Because in reality, it's not that you believe there is no God, it's that you don't want there to be a God. Because if there is, now you're accountable. And life's a whole lot freer if I believe there's no God and I can live like there's no God, even though deep down, I'm not too sure there isn't. That's a tough place to be. So what makes best sense of what you see and know? What makes best sense of what you see and know? And some people will still make the claim they want irrefutable proof. I want irrefutable proof. There is no irrefutable proof. For people that want to believe in God, there is no irrefutable proof. And for people that want to say, there is no God, they do not have irrefutable proof. They're still going to take a step of faith. I heard it mentioned from this way. If you want to find irrefutable proof, it's like looking at the sun to study the sun. You can't look at the sun to study the sun. You'll go blind! We learned that on the eclipse, yeah. But what can you do? You look at the effects of the sun. C.S. Lewis put it this way. I believe in Christianity as I believe that the sun has risen. Not only because I see it, but by it I see everything else. What makes best sense? When you stand on this foundation, does that make better sense of the world that you know and that you see? Or does it make better sense of the world to say there is no God? And what will you do with your observation? Because there's always going to be a way out. You will always have I don't know there's a God because of this one loophole. There's always a logical way out. I think there has to be a God because of this one, I don't know how this. There's always a logical way out. Both ways are going to take faith. But there's clues along the way. One of those clues, there's about 20 of them, but here's one. It's called the fine-tuning of the universe. Other people call it Goldilocks. Look at the distance of the sun and the earth. It's not too close, it's not too far, it's just right. Hey, look at the temperature. Look at how the earth spins. It's not too fast, it's not too slow, it's just right. The fine-tuning of the universe. How do you explain that? Is the fine-tuning of the universe because there's a God that designed it and is in control of it, or, hey, in an infinite number of universes, there's an infinite number of possibilities, and in the infinite number of universes and the infinite number of possibilities, there's going to be one that maybe this could happen, and it just happens that we live in that one. Is that technically possible? Hang with me. That is technically possible. Don't throw your brain out the door to keep your faith. Don't throw your brain out the door to keep your faith. That's not faith. That's folklore. That's myth. That is technically possible. Which one's a leap of faith? Which one do you have to jump higher to believe? Yeah, that's what you're wrestling with. Wrestle with that. Alvin Plantinga gave this illustration. Suppose some men were playing poker, and the guy deals himself 4 aces. And the next 19 hands, he deals himself 4 aces 20 times in a row. 20 times in a row, he deals himself 4 aces. So he's accused of cheating. Ha, imagine that. But the man dealing says, hey, I did not cheat. Suppose there were an infinite number of universes where men were playing poker. And suppose there were an infinite number of hands that were dealt. Is it not technically possible that a man could deal himself 20 straight hands of 4 aces without cheating? And it just so happens we live in that universe right now. Would that cause you to believe the man was not cheating? Is it technically possible the man was not cheating? Is it technically possible? It is. But it would take a leap of faith to believe that he wasn't cheating. So here's what I'm asking you to do. If you're a skeptic, simply take Christianity, put it on like a pair of glasses, and see if it makes better sense of what you see and you know than standing over here. Put it on like a pair of glasses and see if it makes better sense of what you see and what you know. Because what comes into our minds when we think about God is the absolute most important thing about us. Would you stand with me this morning?